What's up, guys? I'm Ryan. I'm an alcoholic.
Ryan.
It's an honor and a privilege to be here tonight, especially with all my former coworkers intimidatingly staring at me. But yeah, no, it's a good feeling to show up. I've been real, heavy into AA and stuff lately, so I'm anticipating this going well. I usually like to open with something that's been going on with me lately, and yesterday I met up with a sponsee and did step work for the first time, and this book tells us that nothing will ensure not drinking like intensive work with another alcoholic, and I find that to be extremely true. It was a beautiful thing yesterday going through step one with this kid. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to open with that. So the program's been weighing heavy on my mind and heart these last couple days, but yeah, I can kind of just jump into it. I was born and raised in Chicagoland, west suburbs. I like to say a relatively normal upbringing, but the older I get and the more I look back and the more insight I gain, the more I realize it wasn't super typical, and I did grow up with a lot of issues. My dad was an alcoholic, so from a young age I had to grasp what alcoholism is, what it means, what it does to people, and so that kind of pushed me away from the idea. Of course, a lot of us grew up like, I'm never going to drink, I'm never going to drug, I'm never going to be like my dad. So that definitely played an effect on my childhood, but beyond that, in his periods of sobriety and stuff, relatively normal childhood. We had enough money to do things we wanted to do. We weren't living a lavish lifestyle, but it was definitely comfortable. High school, schooling was always kind of odd. Like a lot of us, I'm of the belief that we're born alcoholic, and like a lot of us, I felt like I never fit in growing up. I have a lot of not so fond memories of trying to fit in, of trying to find my group, find my niche, stuff like that, throughout elementary school, middle school, stuff like that. But then in high school, when I discovered drugs and alcohol, not really alcohol, I pushed that one off as long as I could because I seen what it did to my dad. But I remember at 14 years old, I was in either 8th or 9th grade, I smoked weed for the first time, and less so the relief and the high that it brought, more so the sense of belonging, the sense of identity that it brought is what I enjoyed so much. I remember feeling like I found my thing, this is it, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, this is what I've been missing, a lot of us feel when we first find that. And it was I didn't even get high the first time. It was just this is what I want to do, hell yeah, I'm a fucking burnout stoner, this is what's been missing. So I carried that into the remainder of my high school career and my teenage years, I suppose. And as I got older, I started to experiment with more things, try new things, more things are introduced to me. By the time I was 17, I started drinking. And people like to say it starts out, it's just fun, and then it's fun with problems, and then it's just problems. And for the majority of my teenage years in high school, it was fun. I was getting by. Consequences started to pile up, but I didn't recognize them. I quit doing sports. I quit cross country and track and stuff. My grades tanked. I actually just requested my transcripts the other day because I'm looking into going back to school, and I was like, God damn! It's who the hell got these grades? Couldn't have been me. But so yeah, I didn't do well, and the further into high school I got, the worse I did. But I graduated. I got by, and some of my most fond memories were definitely senior year. I had the girlfriend, I had the friend group, I finally found my people, I was searching for them throughout my childhood and adolescence, and I felt like I'd found them. They did the same things I did, were into the same things I was, and we had fun. So, senior year, it was all great, but then school ends, and anybody I graduate high school, and anyone who's going to do anything with their life moves away from Batavia, Illinois. So now I'm kind of left with the worst of them. So I remember I got this summer gig after high school, paid $10 an hour, and that was good money at the time. And I was in a warehouse just moving boxes and whatever else, but it was $10 an hour, and at this point in my life I'm really just smoking a lot of weed, taking acid as frequently as I can, and drinking as frequently as I can, and I could barely hold this job down. Like I remember like wanting full paychecks, but I was never able to like go to work all 5 days. Like, so that unmanageability's already come into play. I can't even make a full week of work, and money management is non-existent. I'm blowing like I'm getting paid Friday and it's gone by Sunday, and I'm stealing from my mom. So when I was 17, my dad passed away from this disease. He passed away from alcoholism, and I definitely leaned on those drugs and alcohol and the girl and that high school group that I talked about. I definitely leaned on all those things heavily to get through it. And again, that was like, wow, like this is what alcoholism does. I'll never be like that. I know better. I'm smarter. I have the internet. I use harm reduction. All bullshit. So I'd seen what this disease did, but so my dad had this like jar full of like money and coins and stuff. I don't know, just a bunch of cash in a jar. And unfortunately, my mom was naive enough to leave that out that summer after high school. So I started taking from it just to support these petty drugs and stuff. So like right off rip, like I mean, this is symptom number 150 by now, but that's definitely not normal. Like most kids like don't blow their entire paychecks in 2 days on drugs, let alone steal from their mom to support like a weed and acid habit. So yeah, things started to get bad fast. So now I'm moving into like fun with problems. That unmanageability became paramount. Once the job was like a summer gig, like I said, so it ended. If it didn't, I would have got fired eventually, I'm sure. So that summer gig ended, and there I am with myself. I'm not necessarily at all capable of finding a new job, of going out and like being a productive person or getting things done. So I kind of just sit on my ass for a while, and my whole, like I said, that weed and stuff became my identity, and that just became like, that pedal went to the floor. Like that became my everything, like collecting drugs, doing drugs, trying drugs, thinking about, researching, everything revolved around drugs and alcohol. So it became my identity, and I started to like collect them, and I wanted the best collection, and I'm into pharmaceuticals and pills by now. And I remember for my like grad party this summer after high school, I went out and bought a couple of like pills or something, and it took forever because drug dealers are never very prompt. So everyone's at my grad party like, yo, where's the grad? Like, this is bizarre. And I come back all fucked up. So it's nuts looking back at the things I did, and I didn't really see them as an issue at the time. So I remember by the end of the summer after high school, leading into that fall, I attempted to go to school. I lasted like 3 weeks. And my life is just a mess, and I end up in an IOP, so I end up in like a treatment setting for the first time. And that was interesting. It definitely, I remember kind of being in a really dark place. I feel like, all right, well, this is rock bottom. Like, this sucks. And it's an IOP. It's not an inpatient. So I'm being held accountable with drug tests, but I'm doing whatever I want, really. I've like gotten off the pills. I'm just smoking a lot of weed and drinking or whatever. But my life, emotionally and mentally, is still entirely unmanageable. Like, I can't get by. I can't maintain relationships. I can't be a pleasant person. I can't be a productive, functional human being. So that IOP obviously did not solve all my problems. And I remember, would have been like the fall of that year, my mom came into my room, like it was either early morning or late at night, and she found me like passed out on the floor. I was like clutching a Whippet canister. There's like pills and empty canisters and whatever all around me. My room's a mess, and I'm clutching this bottle of pills, and that identity is in there. Like, that's everything that I want. That's my whole thing. That's my collection. I've been working on it, whatever. And she takes that bottle of pills and she walks out. So now in my mind, I'm like, yo, this lady just took everything from me. Like, this is what I've been living for the last like few years. And so very logically, I say I'm going to kill myself at that point. And that's truly how I felt in the moment. So my mom calls the police. I didn't understand how Baker Act worked at the time. So when the cops showed up, I was like, yeah, I want to fucking kill myself. So the cops took me to a psych ward for the first time. And this is the first time I'm institutionalized, and it was terrifying. I remember they had to hit me with the booty juice, the Thorazine. So I wake up like delirious and confused at like 11:30 at night in a psych ward. And it's not a good feeling. That's peak powerlessness right there. So I wake up, I'm pissed, and my addict my alcoholic thinking kicks into gear and I go into full manipulation mode. I didn't really feel that way. I don't even remember what I said, but I talked my way out of there really quickly, and I was out in 72 hours, just the legal hold, and they sent me on my way. So I get home, and my mom is naive enough to let me come back to her home after that, and things immediately devolve. I didn't maintain any period of sobriety from that. And I continue to do what I do, and that's wreak havoc on my life and the lives of everyone who loves me, all the people around me. So things got bad again very quickly. And I remember by would have been February of that following year, I'd been arrested for shoplifting alcohol. I got pulled over with my buddy. He got a DUI. My ex-girlfriend got felony drug possession. I walked for some reason. I don't know. I must have been really cool in the moment or something. But these consequences started to pile up, and their consequences are not enough to keep me sober. That's for goddamn sure. But they are enough to scare the living life out of, or whatever you say, scare the lights out of my mom. So at this point, she gives me an ultimatum. It's get out or go to treatment. And at that point, I was really desperate. Life sucked. I'm physically dependent on these drugs. I'll go, and I'm locked in the house. Like, that's going to get bad quick. So I'd agree to go to treatment. So I do my first treatment stint, and it's a very atypical situation. I'm sent to an adolescent treatment center. It's Rosecrans out in Rockford, Illinois, if anyone's ever heard of it. Usually I've got like a fellow adolescent Rosecrans person around. I was a Titan. He gave you like team names. So I'm in my first stint in rehab, very atypical. They don't encourage the continuation of care. The staff's not in recovery, so I don't have anyone to like look up to. It's like a hospital setting. It's like a psych ward setting. We're on locked units. It's like a big group of like teenage boys coming off drugs. Like they fought like dogs. It was crazy. So it was just chaotic. But I remember kind of sitting there and I had no grasp on what this disease is or what it's doing to me. And I remember sitting there, I was like, wow. I was like, well, I had a good run. Drugs and alcohol were fun, but I guess that's it. Like, I'm here. I was real gung-ho for, like, NA for whatever reason. So I like that. I was like, wow, I had a good run. That was cool. And as my stay came to a close, like I said, they didn't encourage, like, the PHP. There's no Crystal Lakes up in Rockford, Illinois. So the only option they had was to go to an adolescent recovery home. I went there. It was bizarre. No phone, no nicotine, no leaving property. It was practically treatment. So after about a month there, I can again convince my mother to let me come home, unfortunately for her. So I go home and I relapse that night. And at that point in time, talk about peak unmanageability, my mom's only letting me leave the house to go to AA meetings, and she'll drop me off there. So I get out of the car, I walk into the church, she pulls off, I walk out of the church, go to the nearest liquor store or something, I'm still under 21, steal some alcohol, drink it, and then go back into the church for the last 10 minutes, come back out when my mom pulls up, like, yeah, that was a great meeting. So just absolutely insane. And like, what am I doing with my life at that point? And it's not who I am, and it's not who I want to be, but I can't help it, you know? Like, I'm massively dissatisfied with myself, my thoughts, actions, and behaviors, but I can't do anything about it. I'm powerless over these thoughts, actions, and behaviors. So within a month of getting home from that adolescent rehab, I'm taking an ungodly amount of pills every day, and I'm drinking like a big bottle of wine like every day, and I'm sent back to treatment. Or I think I like fell out of a window or something in a drunken stupor, and my mom found me and realized what was going on. So I was sent back to treatment, and this time again, it's another atypical treatment setting. I don't regret anything, but I would be interested to find out what would have happened had I been sent to Florida like this and had this opportunity, or at least sent to a treatment center that has all those typical Florida-style aspects. But again, I'm sent to an atypical treatment center. It's a hospital detox. It's a rinse and repeat type place. People are in and out of there all the time. They're there for 4 days. They don't care if you AMA, just sign the paper and you can go. So it's a very odd situation. None of the staff is in recovery, unlimited phone calls. It was just weird. It's not about getting you mentally better, it's just about physically better, and go on your way. So I'm there again, I get all gung-ho again. I'm a highly impressionable teenager, so of course I get all gung-ho about recovery or whatever, and then they let me out into their outpatient program. And after repeated relapses and that going poorly, eventually they just kind of administratively discharged me without a completion. But I remember telling my mom it was a completion. She was like, oh, awesome. So I'm kind of back at it again, and now I think the only reason I was able to stay out of treatment for about a year and a half from there, because like I may have not have like gone as far as a lot of people did in terms of drugs or in terms of the kinds of drugs I did and the way I took them and stuff like that, but like I can't get by. Like I'm an early bloomer. Like I cannot. My life is entirely unmanageable when I'm getting high. So it's insane to look back at a year and a half or something that I stayed out of treatment. I probably worked like for a total of like 2 months over that like year and a half. Like my mom doesn't have money like that. Like it was, I don't know how I did it. Like I can't get by. I can't hold a job. I can't go to school. I can't maintain relationships. Like none of those things are possible when I'm getting high. So somehow I manage a year and a half, and it's chaotic, it's unmanageable, and it's miserable. But I credit being able to stay out or at least not to pick up where I left off, because I met a girl. So now I'm with the girl. She kind of takes the edge off. I'm able to kind of lean on her, stuff like that. Sex and love are a hell of a drug. So I'm kind of able to lean on her for a period of time, and it was like a 3 or 4 month thing. And that kind of dissipated because I was like heavily addicted to amphetamines at that point by the end of that. So I was probably the worst possible significant other anyone could ask for. So that ended. By the end of that year, I wasn't in a place where I was physically dependent on anything, so I didn't need detox. So at that point, my mom told me, she's like, you can go to treatment or you can get out. So once again, I'm faced with that ultimatum because I'm making her life an absolute miserable living hell, but I refuse to acknowledge that. It's all her fault. It's all their fault. It's not my fault. It couldn't be me. I'm the victim. This is your fault. I have nothing to do with this. If you knew how I feel, you'd use like I do. So she gives me the ultimatum. I don't want to go to treatment. I don't really need to go to treatment, and I know that at that point in time. So, a third option presents itself, and I'm able to go down to North Carolina and live with my aunt and uncle. Now they have the big house, the entrepreneur and the nurse, and the golden retriever, and the whole nine. Like they're set. So like, why wouldn't living in that situation fix me? They're real strict on their kids, all straight A students, swimmers, stuff like that. So that's gonna fix me, right? So I get down there, and like I remember driving down there. My grandma went with me. And she'd go to the gas station, and I'd go through her med bag, and now I'm driving her like massively intoxicated 12 hours to North Carolina, like no regard for the safety of me, let alone others, let alone my poor 75-year-old grandma. So I get to North Carolina, and I lasted there for like 8 months. I remember in the beginning I had that like, oh yeah, like this is it, I'm going to change my life, things are good, I'm going to stop doing hard drugs, like start brushing my teeth, like hell yeah. So I get down there and that wears off within a few weeks, and I want to go out and do the things that I want to do. My cousin's boyfriend sold weed, so I'm smoking as much weed as I can, but that doesn't do it for me. That's not my drug of choice, and I'm looking for a benzo opiate high in a joint. I'm not going to find it. So I'm drinking as frequently as I can. I'm smoking as frequently as I can. I'm still under 21, so getting alcohol at that point wasn't easy. By the time that I come around, that motivation to change or whatever, that willpower wears off, COVID hits. So now I'm not meeting anyone. I'm not going out. I'm not going to school. I'm not working. Not that I would have been anyways, but I'm not meeting people the way that you normally would. Everyone's locked up. So now I'm kind of stuck. I'm in this situation where I really only have access to weed through my cousin's boyfriend and alcohol. And so I used to kind of look back in that period of 8 months off hard drugs where I was like, well, look at that. Like I managed just weed and alcohol. I bet I could get away with the old weed and alcohol experiment again. But I was absolutely miserable, and I was only on those two because I didn't have access to the others. I was absolutely miserable. I'd spend days at a time in bed. My higher power, my God, was fucking weed and alcohol. Like, what a miserable existence. I remember going to bed just absolutely depressed and miserable because my life was like going nowhere and going in circles, and it just wasn't enjoyable in any capacity. So by the end of 8 months, my aunt and uncle kindly, not so kindly, asked me to get out of their house. I guess having a stoner drug addict 20-year-old living in your basement rent-free isn't a pleasurable experience. So So I got out, and I ended up getting my own spot in Evansville, Indiana, because that's where my buddy lived, my best friend from high school. That's where he went to school. So I move in over there. I got these grand plans of changing my life. The geographical change again, like it talks about in the big book. I'm going to go to Evansville. I'm going to enroll in online school or something. I'm going to get a job waiting tables, and everything's going to work out fine. I burnt through a couple jobs. I finally landed a job serving tables. I never even come close to enrolling in school. Then I start hitting the drugs and alcohol really fucking hard. Like, I've got no one to watch me. This is the first time in my life where I'm not in a situation where I have a mom, an aunt, an uncle, and anything there to supervise me. I've got a clueless roommate who doesn't even drink. So at this point, my addiction really takes off. I get into some really hard drugs over that period of time, and I become dependent on them. Using every night in my room a cocktail of different substances, the worst of the worst. And I was able to somewhat manage it because I didn't have someone sitting there to say, hey, like, you're fucking killing yourself. And it's a miracle I didn't die alone in that bedroom. But so after a few months of that, I'm burning through jobs. I'm blowing every penny I have. I think my rent there, splitting it with that guy, was like $350 a month, and I never came up with it once, not in full. So financially, emotionally, mentally, relationships, everything is entirely unmanageable. My life sucks, but I think I'm getting by. I think I've made it. And I remember sitting there like, wow, I got a handle on this. Like, turns out I'm the one, I can responsibly use fentanyl. Like, I must be the first one. So December rolls around, my mom's moving, and I end up going home to help her move, and then I end up rolling into Christmas, sticking around until then. And so, like I said, I'm using in this unsupervised situation, and I get home and I need to use like I was using in an unsupervised situation, but now I'm supervised. So that got bad really fast. My mom is there watching me destroy myself, and that had to be absolutely miserable for her. I can't imagine what that's like. And it's a beautiful thing that I was able to make amends to her a few months ago for that, and continue to do a living amends on a daily basis. But anyways, it was absolutely terrible. I'm back to just wreaking full havoc on her life and making her life a living hell. The sleepless nights, I can't even imagine. So eventually she kind of says, like, you can't stay here. It's like Christmas Eve. She says, you can't stay here. So I leave. I'm massively intoxicated. I go get more alcohol or whatever it was, and I come back to the house, and this is one of my deepest regrets and one of the biggest things that I had to make amends for. I came back to the house. It's Christmas Eve, it's probably Christmas by now. It's probably like 1 a.m. And I come back to the house, and they've locked all the doors, and my mom and sisters, three women living alone. I come to the house, and I'm trying to get like a phone charger or something, and they won't let me in. So I start kicking. I decide that the best way in is to try and kick the door down. So I start just going at it, giving it the old college try on the door. I tried my best, but the thing was dead bolted. Thank God for them. So when I couldn't get in, I took the Coke can full of alcohol I had in my hand. It was in a Coke can, so I could drink it while I was driving. I threw it through the glass pane on the window, or on the door, just shattering glass all over my sisters and mom. And I take off at this point because I can see they're calling the cops. So cops are en route, and as I'm pulling out, I ram my sister's car with mine. I drive off. I'm just an absolute monster. Like, I'm a maniac. Like, this is not normal. This is not manageable. No one behaves like this, except us, of course. And then I remember I pull up to a gas station. I'm out of gas. I didn't have any money for gas, but I pull up to a gas station to sleep in my car, and I'm texting my sister the most vicious and nasty things because this is her fault. It couldn't be mine. This is her fault. She did this. She's responsible for this. If she knew how I felt, she would use how I use. Just entirely unable to take responsibility for my own actions. So I sleep in my car that night, and I think my mom, it was December in Illinois, so she ends up getting me a hotel room that night. I don't know if you call it enabling or what, but I think she just was trying to decrease the chances that I died. I don't know whether that did or not, but so I'm in a hotel, and I remember she set me up there and left, and she was begging me, like, please don't leave. She probably should have taken my keys, but she's begging me, please don't leave. I'm so intoxicated. I had been for weeks, obviously. She's begging me, please don't leave, and I end up leaving. I take my keys, and I go somewhere, probably going somewhere to get something. I don't even know. But I end up wrapping my car around a tree, going like 60 miles an hour. I had some kind of, I don't even remember the term for it, but I messed up my knee really bad. I couldn't walk right for like a month. I couldn't walk at all for like a week. I tore my head open. I had to get all types of staples in there. I cut my leg open. And I wake up in the hospital. I'm fighting off the nurses. I'm pulling my IVs out, this and that. It's absolutely insane looking back. But again, I'm the victim. This is not my fault. And I remember they must have given me, I don't even remember, they must have given me an ultimatum, and they said, like, go to detox or whatever, and I agreed to go to detox, thank God. So I wake up in a hospital detox, it's whatever. I ended up getting Baker acted that time. First time I deserved it, second time I don't think so, but anyways. I ended up getting Baker acted, and I used to look back on that. I was so pissed that I got Baker acted, like, fuck this. Now I'm in some city-ran, inner city Chicago fucking psych ward. Like, I'm the sanest motherfucker in here. It's probably what everybody in there thought, but I'm the sanest motherfucker in here. I don't deserve to be here. I wasn't serious, blah, blah, blah. And I was really resentful towards the caseworker at the hospital, the therapist that I talked to that ended up Baker acting me. But looking back, I'm incredibly grateful that things happened the way that they did. Because had I not been Baker acted at that hospital, I wouldn't have been referred out to Banyan. And Banyan is my first introduction to this typical Florida-style treatment. I get there, they encourage that continuation of care. The staff is in recovery. They give a shit. It's the way I put it is it's Florida style. Very similar to something like this, but it's in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. So I get there, and I really only went there because they said I could get out a couple days early if I go to treatment, but if they're going to let me out on my own, I have to wait a few more days. So I'm like, fuck it, I'll go to Banyan, sure. So I get there, and I'm still I'm lying to them about how much I was doing and what I was doing. I'm kind of trying to figure out what's the fastest way I can get out of here and get back to doing what I do. But over the course of a few weeks, thank God, I was kind of sold on some of the ideas they presented us. There's two meetings a day, an NA in the morning, AA at night, and I'm starting to get into it again. I mean, again, I'm an impressionable young person, but I was starting to get into it again, and I kind of was falling for it. So when the conversation came up, you should do the continuation of care. Do you want to do it in Naperville, Illinois in January, or do you want to go to Pompano Beach, Florida? I was like, well, all right, I'll go to Pompano. I never leave the state anyways. So I fly down to Pompano, and again, I'm there. This is awesome. Hell yeah, I'm sober, blah, blah, blah. I got like the same group of guys I was in detox with. We're all in PHP together now. This is dope. We're all killing the game, going to the meetings, going to our groups, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, you should do IOP. You should do IOP halfway. I'm like, hell yeah, let me do it. So I follow through on that continuation of care. And I arrive at halfway here in Palm Beach County, and all that momentum dies. That's where I meet Rob. Rob is my house manager when I get there. And all that momentum wears off. That pink cloud goes away. The novelty of being sober fades. And now I'm stuck with myself. Same old me. I take me anywhere I go. And I'm kind of sitting here like, what the hell have I done? Like 2 months ago, I was living in an apartment in Indiana, and then I got sent to detox in Illinois, and now I'm living in Florida. Like, what the hell just happened? And so now I'm kind of sitting there, getting restless, irritable, and discontented. I can't sit with myself, and I go and I attempt to use. I'm trying to see what I can get away with in halfway. I'm doing little petty, random, stupid, abusing my meds, taking smoke shop highs, stuff like that, and can't get away with much in halfway because they drug test for all that stuff. So I'm very quickly caught, and I'm kicked out, like Rob said. It's a very sad night. So I go back to treatment or whatever, and I'm just pissed that I got caught. I'm in treatment. I end up relapsing for real because gabapentin and kratom are not my drugs of choice, and they only led me to do the things that I actually want to do. So I AMA from PHP, from the treatment center they sent me to. I'm doing fentanyl, I'm smoking meth, whatever. I go back to treatment because I have no money, no car, no connections down here. It's not sustainable. So I go back to treatment. I'm still just pissed I got caught. I do another 3 or 4 weeks there. They send me off to a halfway. I immediately start a different halfway. I start drinking. I went down there and I was just gonna drink. So I'm trying the drinking and smoking weed experiment because drugs were my problem. So I get to Fort Lauderdale. I'm just gonna drink. Okay, now I'm drinking. I need a joint. So now I'm smoking weed. Okay, the weed man has Suboxone. What's one Suboxone gonna do? All right, now I'm taking Suboxone. The weed man also has Xanax. All right, let me take some of those, and before you know it, I'm overdosed on the floor of a halfway house in Fort Lauderdale. So I wake up in the hospital, I go back to detox, and I'm pissed. I'm still just mad. I'm the victim. This can't be my fault. Certain set of circumstances brought me here, and that's it. So after that stint in detox, I found out what the solution is. I'm like, oh, I know. I was like, the problem is I need marijuana maintenance. That's the solution here. I'm going to go to, because that experiment's worked out so well for me multiple times, I'm going to go to a halfway house that allows you to smoke weed. Like, that's it. That's what'll solve all my problems. And this is kind of the beginning of my spiritual awakening and my decision to do better and change. Because I get there and I kind of saw the place for what it was. Maybe it was all the weed making me paranoid, but I swear I got there and I'm looking around and I see a bunch of sick people who have given up. Like, these people are essentially in active addiction. They're stealing from each other. They're fighting each other. They're emotionally unstable. They're mentally unstable. They're getting high. They're doing nothing to improve themselves. They're doing nothing to improve their lives or the lives of those around them. And it was really fucking depressing. And I didn't like it one bit. So I saw this place for what it was, and within 24 hours, I called up that one of the treatment centers I'd been at, and I'm like, come get me. Like, I can't do this. So they come get me. And it was so relieving to be in a place where, like, you're not allowed to do drugs. Like, it was just like, I don't know, it was bizarre. So I'm back there, and I do another 3 weeks, and I'm there, and I'm like, all right, like, I tried everything. I tried just drinking and smoking. I tried the marijuana maintenance. I tried getting away with petty shit in halfway. Like, whatever it is you guys want me to do, I will do it. They said, get on naltrexone. I said, all right, whatever. They said, get a sponsor. I said, all right, whatever. They said, call that sponsor. They said, do some step work. And I said, okay. So I start doing all these things. I start taking the suggestions, and things start to go a lot better. I get out. I come back to that same halfway that I was at first with Rob and such. It wasn't perfect by any stretch. I definitely spent the first few months of my sobriety, like that pink cloud wore off, that novelty wore off, stuff like that. And I spent those first few months in a place of contemplation. Is this what I want to do? Am I sure this is what I want to do? Maybe I could try just doing this or that again. Definitely wasn't sure that this was what I wanted to do, but I surrounded myself. I got a sponsor. I got a home group. I surrounded myself with good dudes, and I think that's because there's no way I can stay sober for 4 or 5 months on my own. So I think that is what kept me sober in the beginning, kind of making the fellowship my higher power. And then at around 4 months sober, like, I want to fit in. And all these people I'm surrounding myself with, they all have sponsors, and they all go to meetings, and they all work steps. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll give this thing a try. And I get my buddy's sponsee brother, I get him as a sponsor, and I'm in this really good sponsorship family that I'm obviously still part of today. And I kind of hit the ground running. I'm ready at this point. And I credit halfway to putting me in a position where I'm abstinent long enough and I'm surrounded by good people long enough to be open and willing to attempt this kind of change. Because on my own, if you put me on my own and I had to wait 4 months before I got a sponsor, like, I'm going to be high as hell before that 4 months is up. So I get the sponsor, I start working the steps, and I remember kind of sitting there like, how is writing out this step work and sitting down with my sponsor and telling him about it and calling him, how is it? It all just felt so surface level and so mundane, and it was like, how is this going to change my thoughts, actions, and behaviors? And before I knew it, it did. And I don't know what happened there. I mean, I'm not of the white light spiritual awakening variety, but it definitely happened over the course of working those steps. It's a beautiful thing. So as time went on, like, life just became easier, accepting life on life's terms. Like, for those first few months of my sobriety, I still struggled with doing my laundry, brushing my teeth, like, getting out of bed. And part of that's probably depression, but it's also just that unmanageability. My life, I couldn't deal with life on life's terms. And the more I got involved in the program, the more I worked my steps, the more I communicated with my sponsor, the closer we grew, the more those mundane and simple things became more doable. And now I live this incredibly simple life. Like, I'm a tech at a different treatment center. I work a petty entry-level hourly position. I live in halfway still. I live with a bunch of dudes who are dirty and cause a lot of problems, but I could get into halfway. But anyways, so I live in halfway. I work this not very glamorous job, and I drive to and from in my Honda Accord but like I'm so incredibly happy. I wake up happy every day. I get like giddy with gratitude on like a few times a week at least. It's crazy. I get overwhelmed with gratitude. And just recently I went home, and I remember kind of thinking, I went home for like a little family reunion thing, and I remember kind of thinking about it. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to see the family, the extended family and stuff, and they're going to say, oh, how you been doing and stuff like that. And I can honestly say this is the best I've ever been doing, and it keeps getting better. And that was the case in December when I saw them at Christmas, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is awesome. Like, this is as good as it gets, and it's only continued to get better since then. I have a real sense of peace. I have a real sense of satisfaction in life. I enjoy things like this. Like, I'm not getting paid for this. But there's literally nowhere else I'd rather be. Like, this is amazing. And like I was talking about at the beginning, doing step work with that sponsee, I really didn't know what that's like. I've worked here, I work at another treatment center, and I help those guys, and I talk people through things and stuff like that. So I've experienced kind of carrying the message, but sitting down with another alcoholic and walking him through the first step, it's an absolutely beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be on both ends, because I was on his end 6 months ago. It's absolutely insane, and what I kind of realized is that a lot of it does come down to that higher power, which I choose to call God. And that's something that I've only really what the word for it is, developed on in the last few months. It scared me, and I'm sure some people kind of are taken aback at that word. It's not a enjoyable word. Like, if me 2 years ago was standing here listening to me talk about God, higher power, prayer, all that shit, I'd probably punch myself in the mouth. I'd be like, shut up, nerd. So it's absolutely insane, and that just goes to say that it's possible to get to that place. And I'm still not a huge God spiritual person. I'm no born again Christian. I don't know what God is, but I choose to call it that. And I do pray, and that's a later addition to my sobriety. When I spoke for the first time back in February at my home group, I'm like, I'm really nervous, and everybody and their mom is telling me to pray for acceptance, pray for God to speak through you, say the third step prayer. And so I started doing that. I'm like, yo, this shit pretty good. So I continue to do it, and I start praying on a nightly basis, and that has evolved over the course of a few months, of course. And I just thank God for the day, for keeping me sober, and I pray for the people around me that I want to pray for, the people I don't like quite often. That really does help with resentments and stuff. I just pray for faith and acceptance, peace and guidance, stuff like that. And sometimes I get caught up with it, and that cynical part of my brain is like, what if this is just a pleasant thought? All right, well, then that's all it is, but it's keeping me sober. And I'm going to keep doing it because it's working. It's truly a beautiful thing. Like, I am so overjoyed at this point in my life. And that's all thanks to the fellowship, God, my sponsor, my therapist. We definitely did a lot of work, and that was part of it too. AA is great, but it's not everything. AA on its own could probably keep you sober, but those underlying causes and conditions, those need to be addressed. And I certainly did so with one of the best therapists in the world, if you ask me. Over the course of about 9 months, I did long-term continuation of care. I was in IOP IOP and OP for about 9 months. So yeah, I mean, it's absolutely insane, and I love speaking because I love just going over all those things, and I'm just having spoke about my story. Like, it's nuts to contrast the two. I'm there for my mom. She just called me the other day, and she's a strong woman, but my sister moved out of the house, and she's having trouble because she's an empty nester for the first time, and she's a anxious person, as a lot of us are, and it's a beautiful thing that I'm able to answer the phone and be there for her and console her and talk her through things and assure her that I'm okay, even though she needs reassurance on that quite often. So it's a beautiful thing to be able to show up for the family. We dealt with a death in the family, and I'm able to show up to that, be there for the funeral. I ruined my great aunt's funeral a few years ago, blacked out. I still don't really know what I did, but everyone knows I ruined it. So it's absolutely amazing. I'm able to make amends to the people I love and care about. I just made amends to my cousin the other week when I was back home, and she's about my age, and I'm talking about God and stuff, and I think it threw her off a little bit, but it goes to show that I'm happy that I was able to go to her with some facts and experience to back it up. Like, look, I've got Like I'm no 2 months sober, flew through my steps and let me make amends to you and make everything okay. Like, no, I recently had a year in May, and so I think my family can kind of see that I'm serious, that this change is real, and that like I'm on a different trajectory, but only if I continue to do the things that I need to do. And that's kind of the core of the first step for me. I remember kind of looking at it as like, wow, like I can never drink again. I can never get high again. How shitty is that? But it really, what the first step comes down to is that I'm doomed to drink again. I can guarantee you that I will drink again or get high again if I don't do what I need to do, if I don't continue to work the steps and take other guys through the steps and go to meetings and do service work like this. Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely beautiful thing. I'm not cured, but I'm about the closest as you can get to it, I hope. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's for the first time in my life I'm in a place where I'm excited to see what the future holds. But I could go on probably all night, so I'm gonna leave it at that. But I'm really grateful to be here tonight, guys, and yeah, thank you guys.